Well, good morning. Welcome to actually the last Wednesday in September. It's about to be October. Can you guys believe that? We are in fall. October holidays are right around us. So, of course, here we are again speaking on the importance of suicide prevention and mental health awareness. Once again, we have OG back with us. Hopefully, you're feeling better this week.
Man, I feel better this week. Definitely.
Good, good. Always happy to have you. Also, we have Chris Brown joining us this week. We're going to get into discussion a little bit later with him, but Chris, go ahead and kind of give an overview for those who haven't met you or joined before, who you are, what you're involved with, and we'll definitely be focused on you shortly.
Definitely. My name is Chris Brown. I'm the National Director for the National Cannabis Party, a recently formed electoral party designed to elect candidates and place candidates in office.
All right. And that's going to be big in a couple of months. And this is something we need. We got to push this going forward to help not just those mental health and awareness, everyday life. We all can use this. But a couple of things I kind of wanted to look at tying in again. We've talked about those in the physicians, the medical end, how it's affecting them. Today, we're going to look a little bit more on our teenagers. And we got a couple of important things, as well as something that I want to touch on that I think is great. They're actually going to be changing the way police officers are trained and handle possible situations to help with those who may have a mental health issue, who are using that to, unfortunately, like we discussed, possibly die by suicide at the officer's hands. Yeah, but first we wanted to get into is a little bit on our youth. And to start with that, among those aged 15 to 24-year-olds, suicide is the third leading cause of death and the second leading cause of death, 25 to 34. And of course, that's gone up, with the pandemic. We've got some other things too that we've noticed. Schools, their social distancing, their lack of possibility of interaction has now caused issues with their learning. Their grades are down, their studies are down, all things that are happening because of this. And, Chris, like we've said, there's no way that this is not helping them, because now they're getting added pressure from not only the social aspect in, but now they're failing in school. Chris, what are your thoughts on that real quick? We'll get OG's too before we keep going further on it. But, all this has hurt them, no doubt.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've seen kids that hadn't even returned back to school since the pandemic. It's had a drastic effect on how they interact socially. For those who have been disproportionately affected, you see a further disproportion happen within their lives. And so, who are they talking to? About some of these issues and concerns. The depression, the anxiety, and other things that's can definitely lead to suicide.
Right. OG, got your thought on that real quick, because then I'm gonna tell you something I think you're gonna enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. This youth, definitely, man. When everything changed from the pandemic, some kids go to school every day looking forward to, interacting with friends or just getting out of the household environment. And after the pandemic pretty much took effect, it took away from that. It really took away from them socializing. Yeah, they have their family at home that they socialize with, but there's always times where you need to get out the home and socialize at school with friends at school. You may want to talk to your friends and let them know how you feel and things like that, to that matter. And it definitely, it took a toll on a lot of our youth.
Oh, absolutely, because football games were taken away, basketball games, dances, social interaction was taken from them.
But don't forget to add the increased use of social media and social platforms, which also harbors a lot of other things that affects the mental capacity. So now I have more access to looking at the George Floyd cases and things and acts of racism and acts of violence that you're now consuming more of. So we always have to add those factors into what's going on.
Well, and to your point, beyond that, not just that, yes, they have more access. Now, if they're not able to talk to their peers about how they're feeling about it, now they're sitting at home and getting more frustrated, more anxiety, more depression, because they can't be an advocate or try to get others' opinions. It's bottled and held.
And their rage. I've watched kids on these video games, act out that rage through those social platforms, you know. And so that goes almost to like cyberbullying and that type of thing that exists. Um, all those are compounding factors that can lead to suicide and impact our overall. That we
Yeah.
sometimes.
Do you know too? In some countries, a lot of the things that is presented to us in the states, like a lot of the drama, racism, and things to that matter, you can even research it. It's not shown in certain countries.
Right.
There's countries that, certain countries, they don't even show none of this content too, but we're targeted. Like Full Throttle, our youth is targeted. And what really gets me is, as an adult, you're supposed to pay close attention to what your child is watching on social media, what your child is paying close attention to. But now we have adults that's doing the same thing. So it's pretty, they're watching this stuff with their children,
Mhm.
and then when like we spoke before too about the cyberbullying. Then when that occurs, then the parent is like lost to everything. But you're not making it no better, because the same stuff you're allowing your child to watch that your child shouldn't be watching, that's corrupting their minds. A lot of our adults is doing the exact same thing.
we, we,
No,
we, have, we have to retool our adults, our parents, and I've heard this in different seminars and places I went to speak. It's saying that what about the parent? What about the parent with the unruly kid? What about the parent who's trying to still maintain things and keep things together? The parent is trying to do the best that they can. Most parents want to do the best for their kid, but you know what I mean. Is there a safe place for parents? What are best practices for parents? What are the tools that's out here to help prohibit some of these things? Maybe there are apps that help monitor social interactions and engagement. Maybe there are phone features when giving these kids these phones. And so, what are the tools that parents can utilize? And so, I think creating a safe place for parents. I think that there's no playbook just for parenting. Every parent is going to be different, but I think that if we're able to also resolve some of these issues and problems by creating innovative ways to reach these parents for our kids.
yeah, our parents need a place where they can talk to other parents. Hey, this is what I've been going through. This is what I've been struggling with. What's your thought? They need to be able to express and ask for help too.
For the
Absolutely.
parents, definitely, that want to do that and want what's best for their kids. But what about the kids that have the parents that don't care about what's best for them kids, because they're older as an age, but in the mind they're still young?
Mhm.
So they're influenced. You got grown-ups, man. Like I really grew up Compton, born and raised, and I got kids. I've never influenced my kids to do anything they've seen me done. I've never influenced my kids. I've always tell them and teach them to be better. But you have kids, you have adults, man, that's out here teaching their kids to be gang members.
Mhm.
And that really irritates me. So how do we get with, create something to help those kids? You
It,
know?
you have to, first of all, I think that what I mean, we have to create a standard. I mean, kind of got away from valuing. Um, and so, because there's so much accessibility in ways of alternative ways of doing things, that kind of got away from a standard, and we've lowered the bar. So, just coming to a standard. Like, we're not going to catch everybody out at the same time, right? So
No.
once we create these spaces, we now try to normalize what is now not normal, which is this mental health increase in this capacity in the bandwidth for parents and laws and policies. That's why these things are created to help govern and shape outcomes. And so being able to create this use innovation and the will of people, you know what I mean, by using love as a major factor of how to bring love back to the household, to the nuclear family,
Mhm.
how to be part of the community, to understand each one, teach one. If you got a kid, that kid got a friend that they're gonna look to. You know what I mean? It might be the kid that you don't like, but that kid is that kid's friend, and you can't tell them nothing indifferent. That's who they're looking up to. So we kind of got to embrace use the community model to kind of embrace and capture what we can. We just all have to make a decision, and we all have to get started.
Absolutely. And to both of your points, in 2021, during the pandemic, there was a 51% raise in emergency department visits related to suicide attempt among teenage girls 12 to 17. So they're feeling the pressure. And, the article goes on to state, in large part due to the increasing pressures of our society, information and connections to others. And these things, as you were stating, are not always helpful. They're not always a good thing.
Hey, think about those people who engage with that population more frequent. Think about the teachers that are engaging with these kids in this age range. Now think about that adult capacity to what they have to deal with on a day to day, on top of their own kids. Think about the time that's being spent, and so it's just one of those things where if we just stop and think about it and start to pull back the layers of all the connected components that's tied to just that one kid.
Right. And there's actually a teacher in Colorado, and I love his whole viewpoint. His brother died of suicide right after high school graduation. So he's made it a point now to be able to create a safe space for these kids, let them share, let them help. And he has one-on-one mental conferences once a week with these children. You know, he does stuff of encouragement, of raising their standards, letting them have open forums. And if we can't get it outside, school is a place for that to happen, or hopefully happen.
Listen, I got my word. I promise to God. Like you're feeding my soul right now. I'm going to go to a school that I support. Right now, we were talking about after school programming and things, and I think that, and I mean, I help support the teachers and the adult population as well as kids in the community. Conversation is like, you know what? Let's just go through it. I mean, tap into your local resources, tap into these institutions. Again, like you said, the school is a open platform and an open for kids and adults. You know, so I'm going to make my commitment. I'm going up to actually go talk because I just seen some things. I got a picture of one of the teachers that I know about problems that they're having, and again, we talk about suicide, and it make me, and as I'm saying, talking to you guys, I'm thinking even deeper. Like, man, what how far would a person go? You know what I mean? So it's the part that when they're not in your presence, you know what I mean? You get just to witness conversations and interactions when they're in your presence. What's happening when they're not in your presence?
Right. Well, like, for example, Chris, with you involved in politics, somebody mentioned this to me a couple of years ago, and they're absolutely right. If we thought as much and act as much locally on our politics as we do on the national level when it comes to president, that's where the change would be made. Yes, so in the same idea, if we look locally at these schools and these kids and help there, that's where we'll make the national change on suicide prevention and awareness.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, OG, I want to get your thought on this. There's a high school student in Colorado who's come up with something I think is brilliant. She wants to advocate a state law that requires the student ID cards, which, as you know, they're supposed to have on campus. There's going to feature the state's free 24/7 mental health hotline and website.
That's a good idea.
Right, because now these kids always have it. They've got it in front of them. They can use it. So that's why I wanted to ask you about that, what your thoughts are, because I think that's a fantastic idea.
I mean, I do too, because like you said, they constantly have it with them, you know, because at that point, me being a suicide survivor, man, at that point of actually having that feeling and being in that dark spot and saying to yourself, I'm done with life. And then, you know, actually ready to react on it. You know, some people may say, you know what, I'm going to call this number. Definitely. You know, some people will. And then there was me, like, at my point to where I didn't want to talk to nobody. You know, I feel like nobody understood me. Nobody walked in my shoes. So that's the reason I push so hard for suicide awareness, suicide prevention, because I know what it feels like. You know, I've been in them shoes. So that's why a lot of people reach out to me, especially my young people. A lot of them reach out to me. You know, I have people 12 years old, 13 years old and up that reaches out to me that have seen my story or have heard me speak somewhere. And they reach out to me to tell me how they're feeling, because they one of the main things they say is that I know you understand, you know, what I'm going through. I know you know this feeling. You've really been down this road. And over the years, I've talked many of people out of committing suicide, loved one. It's very important because it get kicked under the rug. You know, people act like it don't exist. And like I said, last time we spoke, man, we got 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds that is actually committing suicide out here. And if the government and everybody can't look at that and say we really have a problem,
Right.
like we have a problem right here in our own backyard, but yet we take that funding and we'll go rebuild another country that we tore
Mhm.
down, and we'll take that money and go rebuild it. But what about right here in our own backyard? What are we gonna do for right here?
Right. And biblically, it says, take care of your own household before you help the others. Take care of your own community before you start stepping outside. Let's help America before we help these other countries. Sure. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, I think it's going to start with us, though. You know, I think just sometimes it starts with a conversation just like the one we're having, to amplify that message and now to identify the pathway to getting there. You know, and so again, through forming policy, it's on us to think creatively on not just on the national level, but also on the local level, on how we can just gravitate to that low hanging fruit. Like I said, that kid, you know what I mean? As innovative as she is, came up with a simple solution that is a start that can happen, right?
Right.
Not only do they have to necessarily go to the state to do that, you know what I mean, to mandate it. That's a great place to start. But guess what? You have a local school board,
Mhm.
and the local school board can enact that very rapidly. You know what I mean? And absorb the cost of that. You know what I mean? Which can be, you know what I mean, not very costly. Also using American Rescue Fund money that was coming from the federal government. So when you
Yes.
start thinking about what you're doing with your money that's coming from the federal government, this is what we're doing. And that's what I was saying about the responsibility and guidance of the national government, um, to guide these states and these local governments to help the lay people and the people of these communities.
Absolutely. OT, two things I want to definitely hit on with you before we have to, unfortunately, see you handle things today, which is going to be a blessing to be, for your daughter and whatnot.
Oh yeah, mandatory. Mhm.
Absolutely. But one thing is in California, for example, and you can definitely speak on this, they would say the rate of anxiety and depression went up by 70% in our youth from 2016 to 2020. During that pandemic, as we stated, they've actually noticed that the districts are reporting 72% of the students are not meeting the state standards in math, and above 58 have fallen behind in English, which is a reverse of a 5-year process. The Black Latino students, as well as our females, are the ones who are especially affected by this.
Again, I'll say like a lot of people, a lot of kids had the homeschool um on the internet, due to the pandemic. But at the same time, a lot of students didn't have that in-home help when it came to their work like they would have at school. A lot of people, parents work every day. So their kids are at home, and the parents are, thinking and assuming that they're actually doing their work. But some people need help. What about the kids that like have special ed classes?
Mhm.
How do you expect them to pretty much be able to do the work? It's frustrating being at wanting to do something but not knowing how to do it and not having no one to assist you in doing it. So that's where the anxiety, even my daughter, and she had to help, but just it was just frustrating to her adapting to something that she's not used to. It's like going from here into here, and it's like she's used to being in the classroom interacting with the teachers, but I'm right here side by side with her, assisting her, but I could see frustration, in her as well. It started bothering her. Her grades started dropping, but her grades are back up now, especially now that she's back at school. But it was like a 180-degree turn in everyone's life. Not also people that worked, that had jobs that couldn't work anymore. But definitely, it increased heavy. I know a lot of parents and a lot of people that I talked to, and their kids was going through the same thing. They was having anxiety attacks. They was really giving up. It's like they was losing hope
Mhm.
because this is something that I'm not used to. This I don't get this. I'd rather be in a classroom doing my work where I can interact with people, but they couldn't. So it definitely skyrocketed.
Well, and the thing is, beyond that too, let's be honest, you have Google. How many
Yes.
students really learned or
Yes.
just did their work? And
Yes.
now that they're having to redo their work, and honestly, now they're behind.
Way behind.
But that's the thing also, you know what I mean? And the schoolwork is just only one facet of it. Again, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
We're watching real life activities happen, you know what I mean, behind the scenes. It's outside of just the realm of education or the hours that you would traditionally be in school. You have more access to these things that's going on. And now that we're kind of, you know what I mean, we've had a downturn in terms of COVID cases. We're not out of a pandemic, you know what I mean? We have the introduction of monkeypox and other things. And so right now we should be looking locally on how do we engage in coaching, and I mean life coaching, community coaching, like creating this ecosystem of support on purpose, like understanding all of these things that's happening. Like these are things that sectors of the government or sectors of your community, and let's say again, just getting started. Like um, City Hall was closed here in the city of Atlanta. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The hard thing was to get somebody just simply on the phone. You know what I mean, you got your elders who are not necessarily technology savvy. It's the technology.
Yes.
I don't think you just wanted with somebody to just answer the phone.
Yes.
And so here are opportunities that we need to make our governments aware of, because our governments can also be we can utilize its platform to be a influence to the private sector, which is like saying hiring more people just in terms of workforce development, entry level type jobs to kind of hit a reset on the workforce, on the workforce side, understanding that people are pivoting, soft skills and training, things like, you know what I mean, Excel, just re-emphasizing those people who are taking those pivots, occupying space and time, giving people things to do, a part of a network, and making sure that the resources that are available are being fed through this pipeline.
Yep.
They rather spend that money on other countries.
But it's on us, you know what I mean? So
I know it's on us, definitely.
yeah, so
But the funding, where the funding come from? A lot of the funding that, like you said, that they need, it would come from the government, definitely, to be able to hire other people to be able to answer these phones. Because definitely our elders, they're not computer savvy or anything, and they need that help. But
and they want
when
it.
it comes to us, man, I get it. I go speak at schools all the time. I work with youth on daily basis. I've been doing this for the last 15 years of my life, dedicating it. Not one single dime being donated to me. I do this out my own pocket to
Mm-hmm.
go do this, to go speak at these schools, to go speak at these youth center, troubled youth centers. And it's just crazy how we don't get the help we need here, even sometimes from the city. Or well, we don't have the funding, and especially in Compton. I go speak with the mayors, I go speak with the city council. Well, we really don't have the funding to do any of this. Like, come on. I'm sure
But we got to
y'all
teach
can
you how
find
to
the funding.
find money. Like you can't go on what just one person gonna tell you, right? So when you understand this is about civic responsibility, right? The little 10-15% that we give, and it shouldn't be on all of us, but we should at least have a basic understanding on how to go find the allocations. So most cities, again, receive money from the CARES Act.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where the voters need to step up and go, listen, we voted you in,
Yeah.
but here is what's happening. Here's what we need done. Here's what we need help.
Well,
Yeah.
that piece is, you know what I mean, and so and because we've used the language like, "Oh, we voted you in," I mean, the we've very seldom seen a person voted out of office. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's mostly somebody that had done something while in office, ethical, that led to their removal. Which now has us seeing those threats of those signs, things happening were signs indicating what's going on. But at the same time, we have to look at how we go back to what we're doing and how we strategically address these issues. And so understanding, saying, hey, listen, this is what this says. Like the conversation that we're having today, like more people being able to tune into what we're doing and what we're saying, and then us providing the resources and the links and further reading to help arm them with the tools that they need, and then saying, "Hey, there's a call to action. Go call your local city council person and tell them that you want this policy that was recommended by a 17-year-old." You know what I mean? There's ways that we can draw that up and write that up and say, "Here's a template, and you just take this to your city council person." and let's start that movement. I don't think that through all the years that we've seen things happen in these wars and things that we've seen that socially impacted our communities, especially those that have been disproportionately affected, has did anything to increase the awareness and connectivity. Because in Atlanta, if you're born in poverty, you're going to die in poverty, and that's just the reality. And so, if we're not doing things different, and we're not going to use what we know and having further using this access that we have, uh, I think that this is a time of empowerment. And I mean, we talked about earlier about the pivot, and I think that they came with no better name, and we'll get into that later. But it came with no better name than just being empowered and understanding that we're taking life experiences like what OG went through, using those life experiences. I can tell you about it, but OG can tell you because he's been through it.
Absolutely. And OG, I know you're about to go, but I want to throw one thing out if I can to you real quick.
Yes.
A new thing that's coming out, and I love it. There's a new ER room idea where that they do is soft lighting, some TVs, card tables to play some cards, recliners. They're called Empath centers in the US. There's about a dozen more on the way. I think right now they're mostly in Massachusetts. The patients come in, they're medically stabilized and seen quickly. And once they make sure, their vitals and whatnot are good, then they're actually seen by a psychiatric specialist within 1 hour of getting there. Okay. And by speeding up the treatment and the observation time, the doctors can see more patients. They can recommend follow-up care, in-house care, rather than automatically putting them in a psychiatric hospital. And they've actually showed that the average hospital, almost 30% of the ER beds are occupied by people with behavioral health emergencies. And a lot of times they sit on gurneys for hours or days before they're seen. But these units themselves that are open right now, that are specializing on mental health and whatnot, they're especially on depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other substance problems. They're actually seeing over 250 patients a month currently.
Wow.
I love this idea. This allows people to come in who, guess what, they didn't break their leg or whatever. And those are important. But let's put them in the actual ER rooms. Let's put these people in these empathy centers or whatever they're going to call them, and let's get them the help they need, and let's make it quicker. I think this is fantastic. I want to make sure I got your thought on it and let you know about that too. This, I think, is the way that we should be moving.
If it's going to help the way the hospital operates, then I'm definitely with that, because you do have people that will be in the hospital in ER.
Mm-hmm.
You have some that, like you said, it's not so serious.
Right.
So they can have a section for the not so serious. That way, the people that's actually need immediate attention can get that immediate attention right away. Like at Martin Luther King Hospital in Compton, you go there today. What's today? Today is Wednesday. Man, you may not see the doctor till Friday or Saturday morning.
Right.
Yeah. Unless you fall out. Some people will fall out in the hospital, loved one, just to get that immediate help, because you've been there for 4 days waiting to see a doctor. And I'm talking about people with walking pneumonia or really, really sick, contagiously sick, that can get other people sick. So I'm all for that.
Well, I think, Sue, it's going to create that safe place, or a place where a 15, 16-year-old can feel they can go get help, not minimalized by it, not put into something that they're not there for, but they can get the help they need. And even they can feel safe because, like they're saying, the soft lighting, the card table, they can interact with others and have this opportunity.
They're going to have people not wanting to leave the hospital.
Right.
That's my thinking is like, okay, so when we talk about mentally ill and those that serve, or those that's there for opportunity, it didn't go on like the homeless population. Where I could just there's a whole another conversation that opens up, and then I want to flip the dialogue on that same topic, is that, and flip it from an ER room to a jail, because again, here in the city of Atlanta, it's been proposed that this diversion the jail be repurposed into this diversion center, and before it's totally repurposed, there's a portion of the lower part of the jail that would be repurposed as a diversion unit. Just thoughts on that, again, and then it's the thought of being in these places. And so One is just like, damn, I don't want to go to the hospital. Like I talk about black people and how we go to the hospital. I don't want to go to the hospital. You know what I mean? We're fearful of that place, and I don't want to go to the jail. You know what I mean? So how do we create this standalone place to take the same philosophy of what's happening, but put it in a place where you mitigate fear, which is often encompassing anything that, in terms of mental health,
Mm.
into that equation. So how do we incubate that idea, and what would it look like?
Mm. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And
Daughter,
it's probably time that you need to get going.
come
So if you'd like, if you could share with people how they can reach out to you, where they can find you.
definitely anyone that would like to contact me or reach out to me or find me on social media, you definitely can find me at on Instagram, any platform, but Instagram, OG Suicide, and that's OG CUICIDE. Suicide spelled with a C, not an S.
And we'll definitely post that again on our sites for everybody. And we thank you so much for coming on, giving us great insight. And remember, too, like we've said, and you've said multiple times, suicide prevention, mental health does not end on October 1st. It's an every day.
It's every day.
All the time.
All the time. Faithfully.
Absolutely.
We got to stop kicking it under the rug like it don't exist, because it really do. And like I said, when you have 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and 8-year-olds committing suicide, we have a major problem.
Yes.
Major problem.
I now officially Suicide Month 2.0.
Yeah, but I believe, and we've said this too, whether it be this issue, mental health, cannabis, politics, whatever it is, like you said too, Chris, we have to discuss it. We can't make anything better if we don't discuss something.
Yep, you got to talk about it. You got to keep putting it out there.
Absolutely, but I think the issue that we have in today's world is so many of us don't know how to talk. We get defensive, we get angry, we get aggressive. That's not how we fix it.
You got your gym shoes?
We have to be open and honest, but be practical and be easy.
Don't wear those
to be able to talk about it.
So I'm just starting among the cannabis users, you know what I mean, to promote.
I'm gone, y'all. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, loved one.
Nice
Thank you,
meeting your family. Okay.
Yeah, just starting a think tank session to those who partake. You know what I mean? I know that most people want to stigmatize the intake method of inhalation, but that is also one of the fastest ways to make contact and to get relief. But being able to do that among a group of people who are survivors of themselves on a day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? We must admit, for those people who do partake, that it does decrease the level of anxiety and depression that we have, if it's only just for a short moment. It doesn't fix the problem, but it does provide some relief. And so being able to say that we want to start the healing process, we're going to be very intentional about that. You know what I mean? And we want, for all our advocates out here, we want to just get active. You know, I mean, we have to break outside these barriers and push through. And for those who don't have compassion, that's in government, that's our legislators, that are in positions of power, this is what we're asking for: compassion. I don't even want you going to be frustrated, because when we go to these people, we're often mad, frustrated, you know what I mean? And we're elevating that energy, you know, and we're spreading energy among others to the point where we're only inhabiting that energy and those feelings. And we want to do it through a way of love and healing, and saying, listen, we just want to plead with you guys, because you got to have some compassion or remorse. You know, I think that the president, you can't be serious to be for the people and talk about you want to lead the research on cancer without acknowledging the benefits of medicinal cannabis to the conversation. Like, you can't be authentic. We can't allow you to. And again, this is pushing toward the politics and not towards any party or affiliation or another. This is just about individuals, and any individual that fit the profile. Where there has been some wrong, and people telling you that these things have been wronged over the years, that we're just asking for some compassion to give insight, and we don't have to give it. But when we talk about cannabis, just use that compassion. If you want to do anything for anybody, to even give consideration, start there, because it only connects to other issues that are underlying issues that we're having, and so this is a great start. It's not the framework. It's not the end all be all, but it's a part of us. You're acknowledging that we're a country designed to heal. that we need to heal. You're going to need us healed at 100% if we have to go to battle. We're battling every day, internally and externally. Just watching the external battles.
Well, the thing is, too, we've had him as the president before he got into office talk about how he wanted to make it legal and decriminalize it and all these things. Haven't seen him move forward, but he's also said at the same point, even if it is decriminalized and it's done on the federal level, it's still going to be Scheduled 1, so there's still ramifications. How can you have both?
Well, we take one step at a time. That's one thing about it. It's all part of a process, right? We'll start with the decriminalization of it, which will start the advanced conversation, which means that I have a listening ear that's went through policy. One thing about the study of it is that we got places like the University of Oregon who has studied, things like COVID and cannabis through means and times of what that we had defined pharmaceutical interventions for this COVID-19. Now that we have pharmaceutical, they had to take research, right? It still exists, right? It's still existing today. They have developed research that tell you that cannabis has blocked out the COVID protein, the use of cannabis. And whatever combination of CBG, CBN, CBA, this is the study of all these cannabinoids. Unlock the plant, So I take the decrim first, allowing the study of the plant for research and development. And I'm offering Georgia to be one of those places, to continue to have a medical program that allows for research and development through flower, through human consumption, and understand the trends and who are using these products. How often are they using it? Is there a dependency on it? But the black market right now is showing that the use of fentanyl and other contaminants in the growth cycle is also hurting us just as bad.
Oh, absolutely. A couple of states we'll talk about, for example, Arkansas. Secretary of State declared the ballot initiative insignificant to appear on November's ballot. Now, they're expecting some court procedures, but proponents of the measure believe this is merely a procedural step that the state Supreme Court will allow it to appear. But we've got this going on in multiple states. We've seen evidence in some of them say, oh, it's not enough. It's not good enough. We don't have enough signatures. The signatures aren't valid. They want to fight it. And here we are, 6 weeks away from having major ballot and vote. And if we've got to keep fighting it, we're not going to get it on the ballot.
So what I'm saying is that, for those who fight and keep fighting, what we're working on is a solution to that will end the fighting, that will end the internal war, and offering and asking the federal government to extend programming to allow states to opt into medical research programs and cannabis programs. One of the problems, in my opinion, is saying that we have this adult use recreation platform that basically elevated out of a medicinal program. But one thing about this recreation or this adult use is that it allows for high taxing of the people, especially those who can't afford it, who use it as medicine. We're talking about, you're going to tax it. And, you're taxing dollars that I'm earning in terms of minimum wages, but allowing programs to opt in for those who really need it the most, to opt in how they're utilizing it, for their conditions, which then help us advance precision medicine and other opportunities in terms of developing new products and new ways of taking this piece, the natural medicine, not the pharmaceutical generated medicine. And that's one of the things that we want to talk about when we talk about medicinal medicines and wellness, is that sometimes the pharmaceutical end of things is also hurting us. Sometimes the medicine that we're taking, the side effects are just as worse as the conditions, over time. So allow us to go back to traditional medicines, to utilize it in such a way that you unlock it for those who have used it as an indigenous plant. With those factors into consideration.
Right. So, for example, in Oklahoma, the challenge appears to be on the state's ballot initiative, but a former legislator wants to challenge the signatures collected, and the advocates want to challenge the signatures collected on tribal land.
Right. So too often that we don't consider our tribal counterparts that have been on this land that exists, may not have always been traditionally a part of the voting population, in terms of the targeted basis of these parties, but they exist. And so therefore, as existing into the process, they should also be counted. You know what I mean? Their voices should be heard. They qualify for so much, just just of being of descent in the first place.
Mhm.
Again, this plant, you're also outlawing this plant from those who have used it the most.
Well, and as you were stating, these are citizens. These are people of this nation, of this country, who should have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
They should have the right to be heard. But I'm wondering, actually, are they using this as an excuse to try to fight it, to maybe even use a stereotype, or even in a form of pushing this ethnicity and this race of people to the side and saying, you don't matter?
Well, if you follow the history of these states, you know what I mean? And when you look at the states that these things are going on, just follow back and look at the history of these states. You look at places like Oklahoma and the Trail of Tears, which is where it has a large Native American population, often been able to do certain things on their reservations, but it's also been a place where they've also never claimed the land that was the land that they claimed. So by right of their own voices that they've been silenced, to just be a part of society but not counted. I think that it's slowly changing. You know what I mean? We heard the president make mention of the Atlanta Braves, and having the natives have their own voices in their own decision making and on how do we use things that may affect the culture, may be culturally insensitive, but because we're not inclusive of them into the conversations, you know what I mean? I think that's the ask. You know what I mean? We should be more sensitive to the population, and so therefore advancing conversation, not putting and pitting procedural challenges as steps in a way for you just to pit argument and challenge things. I think that they're weaponizing the process, and I think that the president should acknowledge that and should be able to step in from the federal government to say, hey, we have an obligation to do some things. You know what I mean? Other countries abroad are doing some of the same things. We don't have to wait on other people to assess best practice. We should be leaders of that. We can't go get Brittany from overseas and then still penalize people. You know what I mean? Here
Right.
local on the same piece. Like we're just so hypocritical as a country that I think that there's opportunity right now that we challenge the government and we challenge the parties. Challenge the people. I think that there's new ideologies coming out of independent thinking and not just getting on the bandwagon because everybody else is becoming more political.
Right. And that one of the things that actually could be a good end is that Arkansas. The state secretary declared the ballot initiative insignificant to appear on the November ballot. However, proponents of the measure believe that that's just merely a procedural step and that the Supreme Court of Arkansas will allow it to appear on the ballot and on the initiative.
Hey, man, due process. I think the will of the people will speak loud and clear if you allow for that to happen in such a way that, again, it's measurable. I think, or you can just go ahead and just do it, right? Go ahead and do what's right, and using your executive authority of that state to make that happen.
Well, that's kind of what happened in Nebraska, because they actually fell short of the signatures needed to put cannabis on the ballot. However, ACLU of Nebraska filed a suit in federal court saying the signatures violated the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. The district court agreed and issued a temporary injunction. So the state appealed the decision, which was overturned. So it looks like it's up to the legislation to be able to put it on the ballot for the 2023 session.
It's always up to the people. Again, we elect these people to represent our voices. And so therefore, again, this is why we created a party. Again, with the National Cannabis Party, is that we are no longer going to sit around and wait for people to get their mind right about things that affect people as it relates to cannabis. Again, cannabis is tied to so many things, and people are like, oh, it's just about cannabis, it's about weed. It ties to so many things, from the medicinal values to the education, down to workforce development, to economic opportunities, to sustainability, again, to use of sacrament and historical factors. There's so much that we're yet to learn about this plant, and that's hemp and cannabis plant inclusive. As one plant, like the species as a whole, from low THC to high THC, to all the cannabinoids and sustainable uses, that we have the opportunity to now be and lead the world in this innovation and this research.
Well, one of the questions I was thinking while you were mentioning all that, we've seen a lot of positives with it, not just medicinally, but we've seen it to where they're making prosthetic limbs out of hemp. We've seen where they're making hempcrete clothing, all these other things. Is there a possibility that some of these benefits can be restricted and held back by not allowing it to be federally decrimmed as well?
Well, you see some states go to challenge this green leafy substance, you know what I mean? Because it's hard to penalize without actually having a field test or a test for substance, which now has to, which in some places or some instances, has to be associated with the direct crime. You know, this is where this has been weaponized again to use this as probable cause to create a situation that leads to, you know what I mean, further charges in the criminal justice system. Again, this is where we're looking at how we're policing, how we're doing it, how we're accepting things in our society, how we're using, again, this innovation and this research and this technology on things that we already knew. We knew that the rope and the sails and things that are made out of this hemp, you know what I mean, played a viable role. Now we just have to catch up with the times.
Right. Well, one thing too that's on the bright side, Pennsylvania. Not sure what you've heard about that, but the governor, Tom Wolf, he supports legalization of cannabis in the state. But he states that the Republican-controlled state legislature does not. So the governor has actually taken action to his own hands. He announced pardons of convictions of low-level, nonviolent cannabis offense. The Board of Pardons is accepting applications through the end of this month. And the lieutenant governor, John Fretman, met with President Biden during Labor Day festivities and discussed for 2 days marijuana policy. So that's a big positive.
No, we see some great positive steps and strides, you know what I mean, behind the scenes, most definitely. Now it's time to get on the forefront of what's going on. It's almost, again, we're right around the corner from the elections, from the general election. Again, we got states with ballot initiatives and concerns. If this is the nation of the people, for the people, by the people, then I think the people will start to speak. I think the legislators and those who are now being pushed by other factors will start to get it right. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's not something that needs to be regulated, because again, too much of anything is bad for you. But I think that this could be done in common sense policy. That is just very common sense, that you allow the states and things to do what's necessary. You give incentivized programming for those people who can get it right, who meets a certain criteria and framework, who's providing education and contributing to the workforce, again, to the localized economy that will then contribute to the federal government. And so I think that we will start to breed some of the best and brightest and some of the best innovators, that some of the best, brightest ideas came while consuming cannabis.
I agree with you. And to our point of what we've spoke on before, and we spent a lot of time in August on it, how important is the safe banking to get done in this, not just for the people involved with this field on all aspects, but to help further it?
Well, once we standardize what we're going to do, and this is us saying this is what we want to see happen, and not waiting on somebody to figure out, you know what I mean, what they want to happen. Banking is obviously an essential part to financing an industry and financing a business. But I think that there's going to be other innovative solutions that come out that's going to be able to either circumvent the process or provide alternatives to the process. You know what I mean? Again, this is one system that is for us, by us, of the people, the economy. But again, I think that the federal government will come on board. You know, I think as we go around to looking at more digital currency and these policy shifts that goes around that, there's opportunity to shape and shift what's happening in that sector of conversation. There's opportunity to talk about how do we get more into our. We're definitely shoving it out again to countries that's providing aid, but how do we get a return on providing aid domestically? I think
Absolutely.
that's a conversation. How do we get into the conversation of imports and export? You know what I mean? Abroad, not even talking about crossing state lines. You got places like California and Colorado and Oklahoma. You know what I mean? This is where hemp grows naturally. You know what I mean? And grows freely along. You get it off the side of the road. You know what I mean? But that's the best medicine. You know what I mean? Than engineering some of this medicine. Like, let's do the research. Like, what is it yielding? What type of properties what type of beneficial properties are they producing that's going to help some of these ailments? Is it the fear that traditional medicine would then undermine modern day medicine? You know what I mean? Is that the fear? Or people will start to live longer, possibly? Again, the president said that he's going to take on this war on cancer. He lost a kid to cancer. I think he owes his kid, this initiative by exploring all aspects.
Mhm.
Anybody else that's going through these situations, cancer is one of the fastest growing diseases in this country. Look at the food, agriculture as a whole. As we talk about this plant, we talk about agriculture, we talk about commerce. We're talking about education. These are three essential assets that we have and committees that we have within the federal government that needs to be looking at this plan.
I agree with that. And the same thing to me, I think cancer is not only, like you said, a huge factor. I don't think that we fully understand and know what it is to begin with. I think a lot of times we kind of just generalize it, because when you strip it down, cancer is basically the rapid mutations of other cells eating other cells, which we all have cells in our body. So where does all of this formulate from? I think it's a very, very broad thing when we come to cancer. And I don't even think we've touched the beginning of what it truly is and what happens.
Like OG was saying earlier, not only on the content that we're viewing, there are certain things that are allowed and practices that are allowed to happen as it relates to our food that are allowed to happen here in the United States. It's also prohibited. There are things that in some of these products that are prohibited in other countries because they're known to cause cancer and other things that happen. You know what I mean? But they're not outlawed here in the United States. It's heavily used. And so, again, we have to look at what we're doing and start to educate ourselves. And I think that as we educate our communities on these significant pieces, like the use of just the red dyes in potato chips.
Yeah.
I look at how many flaming hot chips would actually go out. You know what I mean? It's being used over time that could cause cancer.
Absolutely. The sugars in our drinks, it's almost everywhere. Really true. If we stopped and we looked at what goes into ours, what our nutrients are, and all of our things that we eat and drink, I think as a country, we should step back and be shocked.
Hey man, I think that we wanted to produce the best and the brightest, and I think that if we wanted to produce that and have a strong military country, then you want to have a healthy country. We gotta quit misutilizing our veterans who also succumb to this. With this before they leave or when they come home.
Absolutely, no, 100% agree with that. So real quick, as we're starting to wrap up, I wanted to share two stories kind of involving with suicide prevention, mental awareness. One of them I just heard the other day, one I've known for years, and I think they both hit home in two different sectors. But the first one is this little boy walks up to his father one day and looks at his dad and goes, "How much is my life worth?" So he picks up a stone, hands it to his son, and goes, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that stone to the market, walk around, don't say anything. When somebody comes up to you and asks you how much, hold up two fingers. That's it. See what they offer you." So he goes down to the market, walks around. Little old lady comes up to him and says, "I love that stone. How much?" Just holds up the fingers. She goes, "I'll give you $2 for it." He ran home, told his dad. His dad goes, "Okay, now I want you to take that same stone down to the museum, walk around with it, wait for somebody to approach you. When they ask you how much, just hold up two fingers and see what they say." So he does the same thing, goes to the museum, he walks around. Somebody approaches him. "That's the stone I've been looking for. How much?" Two fingers. Says, "I'll give you $200. So he kind of stood there for a minute. They went home to his father. Said, "The museum said they'd give me 200. He goes, "Okay. I want you to take that same stone down to the local jewelry store where they specialize in precious gems. I want you to see what they say." As soon as he walks in the door, guy gets all happy. His eyes get real big. He goes, "I've been looking for that stone my whole life. How much?" Holds up two fingers. He goes, "I'll give you $200,000 for it." Little boy gets the money, runs home all happy, looks at dad, goes, Dad, they gave me $200,000 for this stone." He stops, he looks at his son, goes, "That's great, but here's what I wanted you to learn above all. Your value is where you place yourself in life, where you position yourself and who's around you. You can be that $2 stone, that $200 or that $200,000 stone." And I thought that was very important, as to say, that's where we need to be. We need to be around the people that value us, see importance and value in us to express our own values.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that's where the love is going to come from, because it's going to be authentic.
Oh, absolutely. But the big one to me is and I heard this one years ago, and I think we need to take this in our everyday life. There is a individual who graduated high school, and I don't remember what state. This was a few years back. I believe he was the starting quarterback, got a lot of college offers. He had what everybody thought was the great life. He had the girlfriend. He was, the head of his class, the top GPA, everything. So when he gets up on graduation and he speaks in front of his class, he says, I got something I want to tell you that not even my best friend, and I don't know his best friend's name because not even my best friend knows this story. He goes, but when I was a sophomore in high school, I was walking home. It's right before Christmas break, and I had all my books in my hands, and I dropped my books. Others walked by, laughed, made fun of me, whatever, slapped some of the books, kicked them. He comes over, and he didn't know this guy at the time. He helps him picks up his books, and he noticed one of the books. He goes, oh, I enjoy that too. Would you like to come over this weekend and see my collection or discuss it or whatever? And the little boy said, okay. So we did, and that ended up being a great friendship. They were together everywhere, played football together, spent their summers together, outside of school, all of that. So as he's standing up on stage, he goes, but here's the thing that even he didn't know. The reason I had all my books with me that day is I was going to go home and kill myself this weekend. And I didn't want my mother to come to school and have to clean out my locker. That's why I did that. But because that one person stopped and helped him and asked him and saw a common interest and developed a friendship, he changed not just his life forever, but how many others did he change? And we can be that one person. Right. We never know who we're going to influence or how. So we have to be open and accessible and show that love to everybody every day.
Totally agree. It don't take much. It only takes a, hey, how you doing?
Right.
That's a real question. I'm doing great. How about you? And then we just in passing. It's just that can change a person's life. Like I walk past people sometimes say, man, put a smile on your face.
Right.
And just for this, they realize that they weren't smiling, and they smile. And you just never know what that does to a person. You know what I mean? And just in the point of space that they was in at that moment, that you may interrupt a dark thought or some dark thinking to understand that somebody sent a sign. And that's the power of love, man. That's the power of spirituality, of finding oneself, which is searching within self to be able to start the internal healing. You know what I mean? 'Cause everything starts with you. You know what I mean? And I think again, being collectively meeting people who sometimes people gravitate to of the energy or the mindset or just the commonality, something that we may have in common. That's why I say check on your strong friends.
Yes.
Your strong friends, not the ones who got stuff going on. Those two, but those people who that help those people.
Right, because we never fully, unless you've got that close friendship, you never really know what someone's truly going through. They hide it. They don't show it. They don't express it, but they're hurting too. Maybe not every day. Maybe it's not as much as others, but I promise you they do. I had a tough weekend myself, and I had a whole roller coaster. We all have roller coasters. But the main thing is, and we've heard it before, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Many times the next day, we visualize it differently. It doesn't seem as massive in front of us as it did the day before.
Right.
So every day, take it a step at a time, whether it's, for example, I shared this a couple of weeks ago. I've changed the way I eat, what I drink, what I do. Starting May 1st this past year, I've now lost 70 pounds since May 1st. That didn't happen the first week, the first month. It took day after day after day. And it was not easy, but I'm happy with where it is now. And I say that for people that have mental health issues. It's going to take a day by day, moment by moment process, but you're not alone. There are hotlines, phone numbers, websites, programs like this, individuals like OG Suicide. There's individuals in your own hometown, in your own community that can help and want to help. Please reach out for them.
And never be afraid just to ask a question. You know what I mean? And you don't have to personalize it. Sometimes you just ask for a friend.
Absolutely. Well, in closing, First of all, Chris, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your insight. Like to give you this opportunity now to tell people how to follow you, where to find you, connect, and how they can get involved with all of the stuff that is going to be happening, not just with what you've got going, but how we can help change this politically.
Definitely. You can follow me on all social media platforms at CB, the number 4 ATL, the CB4 ATL on social media platforms. You can follow some of the work at actionnetworkatl.com. And also check out My Cannabis Spot, mycannabisspot.com or .org. I'll definitely give you some of the work that we're doing here in Georgia, but yet across the country as we got other great things that's in the pipeline to come.
Once again, like I said, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to having you on again soon, especially as we get closer towards the elections, and we'll have more stuff that we'll be covering on that, especially in the next weeks to come. Myself, if you looking to connect with me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, DJNQ75. Follow the Mata Foundation, our Twitter page, Facebook. We post stuff every day that's vital, not just in mental health, but also in the cannabis field. Thank you to our special guests. We look forward to next week. Hope everybody has a wonderful, blessed week. And in closing, you've got people that are willing to help. Reach out to these sites, these hotlines. We'll be posting hotlines, phone numbers, websites on our sites so that you have those opportunities to reach out to people. And this whole show we've had scrolling the prevention hotline 988. Dial that. Even if you have just that moment, if you're on clarity, uncertainty, we've got people there to help you. But again, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful week. Share the show with other people. It's available on all of our platforms. You can review it, revisit it. If you got something out of it, share it with somebody else. Have them tune in next time. Have them tune in anytime to follow us and to help learn. Thank you all. Have a blessed week and see you guys soon.